Hi, I'm Dr. Mike, and welcome to Ask the Doctor. This is the first of a series on immune health. And today we're going to talk about myths versus facts about the immune system. But first, hit subscribe, click thumbs up, and ring the bell so you can be notified every time we post a new show. So let's get started. All right, myth versus fact. Going to bed with wet hair can cause you to catch a cold. Well, that's a myth. There is no evidence in the research that going to bed with wet hair can cause a cold. You have to remember that the cold and the flu, these are caused by respiratory viruses. And when you cough, they get caught in the droplets and they float around in the air and somebody else breathes that in. That's how those viruses spread. It's not about wet hair when you go to bed. Although it's probably not a good idea to go to bed with wet hair because it might cause other problems like dermatitis and dandruff, maybe even some fungal issues. But as far as causing the cold, that's a myth. Fact or myth? We get more sick during the winter. Well, that's a fact. It turns out that there's about a 12.5% increase of people going to see their doctor because of cold and flu-like symptoms during the winter. So, yeah, we tend to get more sick from these viruses when it's cold outside. Why does that happen? Well, I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one, and this is a big one for me, it's vitamin D. During the winter months, we just aren't going to make as much vitamin D from sunlight as we might during the summer months. And so a lot of people, especially, if you're living in more northern climates, from let's say from, December through March, April, even if you're outside a lot, you're not making a lot of vitamin D. And vitamin D is so important to a robust optimized immune system. So I think right there is a big reason why these viruses can sneak in a little bit more during the winter. Also, keep in mind, we tend to be more indoors. Instead of walking to work, people get on the bus and go to work because it's cold outside. Or even the sports that are played during this time tend to be more indoors, like basketball. And so all of that allows these respiratory viruses to pass pretty easy from one person to the next. And then there is something interesting about the virus that causes the flu, the influenza virus. Turns out that virus might survive better in colder weather. It's not conclusive yet, but there's some interesting research there. So yeah, it's a fact. We do get sick a little bit more during the winter months. All right. Fact or myth number 3. You should feed a cold and starve a fever. What do you think? Well, it turns out this one's kind of in between. I say that because it's not really about a cold or a fever. It's more about the pathogen, the virus or the bacteria that's causing the infection. So in animal research, they've shown that if you feed animals with viral infections, that actually improved survival. But if you feed animals with bacterial infection, that actually caused more illness. So there's something interesting there, but it's not so much about whether it's a cold or a fever. It's more about, is it a bacteria or a virus that is causing the infection? Listen, much more research is needed on it, but it's very interesting. At the end of the day, though, I got to tell you, if you're sick and your immune system's revving up, it needs energy. So this idea about starving and feeding, I don't think we should get into it too much. It's good to have a decent amount of calorie intake when you're not feeling well, so you can fuel the immune response. But overall, I'm going to give this one an in between. All right, last one, fact or myth. If your snot is green, it means you have an infection. What do you think? That's a fact. Mucus is normally clear. Sometimes with seasonal allergies or just some congestion, it might become a little cloudy, a little yellowish, let's say. But man, if you start seeing that definite greenish, even towards dark green and even blackish color, that usually is a good sign, specifically of a bacterial infection. Why does this happen? Well, it has to do with the immune system. Most of the symptoms we deal with when it comes to infections is because of our own strong immune system. And in this, and with the change of color in your snot, this is a perfect example of that. The white blood cells, which make up the immune system, come into that area, the nasal cavity, and they release granules that contain proteins and enzymes that will help to fight the infection, the bacteria, kill them, basically. Where it's the release of those proteins and enzymes from the granules that causes the color to change. So it's actually a good sign overall that your system is working. Your system is fighting. And that's often the case when it comes to any symptom with an infection, fever, chills, what have you. They don't feel good, but those are signs that your immune system is doing what it is supposed to do. So if your snot is green, you probably have a bacterial infection. That's a fact. All right, there you have it. Myths versus facts about the immune system. By the way, if you want to learn a lot more about how the immune system works and ways that you can boost the immune response, go check out our course on the immune system at lifeextension.com/wellnessu. And that's the letter U. Lifeextension.com/wellnessu. And don't forget to hit subscribe, click thumbs up, and ring the bell so you never miss when we post a show. I'm Dr. Mike. Thanks for watching.